Good morning, everyone. Honorable dignitaries on the dais, Reverend Father Rajiv Kurin, Professor Charles Edquist, Dr. J.K. Matthew, dear teachers, and my dear students. We have gathered here today to celebrate the life and lasting memories of one of our beloved teachers, Professor K.K. Francis, who played a significant role in advancing economic studies in this region of Kerala. Professor K.K. Francis, who taught at the Department of Economics, St. Berkman's College from 1956 to 1991 until his passing away, was a dedicated educator with a passion for teaching. Over his 35-year career, he specialized in subjects like development economics, international trade, and macroeconomics. He was known for making learning enjoyable for his students. Thanks to his profound knowledge, excellent communication skills, and deep enthusiasm for teaching. Professor Francis not only influenced his students' academic lives, but also their personal growth, leaving a lasting impact on generations. He possessed exceptional oratory skills, debating abilities, and stage presence, making him a vibrant and inspiring personality. He expired on May 1st, 1991, with 1 year left for retirement. In memory of Professor K.K. Francis, the Department of Economics instituted a lecture series in the year 1992, and we have been fortunate to have eminent academicians such as Professor C.P. Chandrasekhar, Professor Jayati Ghosh, Professor Padmini Swaminathan, Professor Sunil Mani, etc. as resource persons. This year's lecture is the 32nd in the series, and we have an esteemed scholar to deliver the same in Professor Charles Edquist. Professor Charles Edquist is a renowned scholar in the field of innovation studies. He served as the founding director of CIRCLE, the Center for Innovation Research and Competence in the Learning Economy at Lund University, Sweden. With an academic background in statistics, economics, and economic history, he earned his PhD in economic history from Lund University. Throughout his career, he held positions at various prestigious institutions, including UC Berkeley, SPRU Brighton, CRIC Manchester, ISEG Portugal, and IFRIS Paris. Professor Edquist's influential work has shaped innovation policy and strategy in Sweden and Europe. He has advised governments, international organizations, and companies such as OECD, UNIDO, EU, UNCTAD, ILO, UNDP, UNESCO, Vinnova, and Saab Aerospace. His research covers diverse topics in innovation studies, including innovation policy, knowledge networks, and the role of institutions in technological advancements. He is particularly known for his contributions to the systems of innovation approach, the Swedish paradox, and innovation policy. His early work in public procurement for innovation has significantly impacted both academic discussion and public policy formulations. Dear Professor Edquist, with a lot of affection and happiness, I welcome you to the Professor K.K. Francis Memorial Lecture 2023-24. I cordially welcome our dear Father, Reverend Father Rajiv P. Kurin, our Father Principal, who is also the President of this gathering, to our midst. I am glad to say here that he's a constant source of inspiration for all the initiatives of our college and our department. Hearty welcome, dear Father. To share with us the fond memories of Professor K.K. Francis, we have among us Dr. Jacob Thomas, who was Professor Francis's colleague in his initial years as a teacher here at St. Bergman's. With immense joy, I welcome you, dear Jacob Thomas, sir, to this august gathering. I proudly welcome Lisha and Abraham's parents to this gathering, who is the recipient of Professor K.K. Francis Memorial Award for securing the first rank in BA Economics Program 2020-23. Hearty welcome to our former teachers of the department who have been instrumental in the formation of our students over many decades. Very specially, I welcome Professor T.K. Thomas, Dr. Joseph Kurian, Dr. Philip MP, and others who are present here during the lecture today here. Hearty welcome, dear sirs. I gratefully acknowledge the efforts of our teachers and our dear students in the department to gather together all the arrangements for the lecture today. Hearty welcome all my dear colleagues and dear students to this gathering. Finally, I welcome all other participants of the lecture, teachers and students from other departments of the college and institutions around the college, and our dear alumni of the college. Hearty welcome all. Before I wind up, I would like to acknowledge the fact that today's lecture is being held in collaboration with Kerala Economic Association, KEA, which is a professional organization established in 2013, aiming to create a platform for individuals interested in economics, especially focusing on the regional economy of Kerala. It brings together students, researchers, teachers, administrators, and industrialists. KEA's objectives include improving the quality of teaching and research in economics, organizing workshops and training programs for researchers and teachers, and facilitating exchanges of ideas through conferences and seminars such as today's. We gratefully acknowledge the organizers of this event today from KEA's end. Once again, welcoming you all. I wish you all a very highly engaging session today. Thank you very much.
Today, we fondly remember Professor K.K. Francis, who was a great teacher for the students of St. Bergman's College. You may know that our economics department had a glorious past with all these great teachers. They contributed to our college as well as to the entire community. In and around Changanassery, more than that, they were all very famous in Kerala also. So these type of great teachers are always remembered by their academic contributions. And we gratefully acknowledge their contributions through these memorial lectures. And today, we are on the 32nd memorial lecture series. And as the head of the institution, I should acknowledge the efforts taken by the Department of Economics to have this memorial lecture series in the best way they can. So today we have with us Professor Charles EDQUIST, who is very famous for his innovation theories. So we are really blessed by your presence in our campus, and I hope you can inspire the students of our college in the very best way, I think. Innovation as such, anyhow, I have to remember one thing that now. A week before, two of our students were called to Mumbai. And you know, they were called or invited by Hawkins. You all know about that. In all our houses, we use these Hawkins instruments, no? Then pressure cooker, no? You all know it. So they were invited for a special purpose. That was an innovation by our two students. They both are boys, and they did innovation in this pressure cooker in our kitchen, no? So the thing is that നമ്മൾ കഞ്ഞി വാർക്കാനായിട്ട് കഞ്ഞി ഈ പ്രഷർ കുക്കറിനകത്ത് വെക്കുമല്ലോ. അങ്ങനെ വെക്കുന്നതിൻ്റെ അടിയിൽ അവരൊരു നെറ്റും പിടിപ്പിച്ചു, അതിനൊരു ടാപ്പും കൂടെ പിടിപ്പിച്ചു. അപ്പോൾ കഞ്ഞി വാർക്കണ്ട, അല്ലാതെ തന്നെ ടാപ്പ് തുറന്നാൽ ഇത് പുറത്തേക്ക് പോകും. സോ ദാറ്റ് ഈസ് a small alteration, but it makes a lot. That is the innovation they have made, and our students were invited by the MNC, multinational company, Hawkins, and they had to present that innovation, and they were allowed to apply for patent for that. So we should at least applaud those, our two students, no? Yes. So anyhow, that happened last week in our college, and today we are marking a new journey, I think, with the presence of Professor Charles EDQUIST. The thing is that he has inspired the Swedish Prime Minister to have a national policy on innovation. So that is his contribution to the nation of Sweden. Yes. So I think that he can inspire our Prime Minister or our national leaders and contribute, or at least throw some light to their mind to have an innovation policy, especially our new education policy. You all know that the new NEP 2020, that has more innovation areas. That means that ask all the students, that innovation, that national education policy asks all students to have more innovative ideas. And these type of talks will help you to have greater ideas of innovation and to have your education more fruitful. That means you have to think out of the box. Being inside the box makes nothing. It's comfortable. You can be inside the box, or you can go along with the traditional way of education. But when you think out of the box and go out of the box, that is innovation. That is called innovation. And I hope this talk and these sessions, this interaction will help you to be good innovators and will benefit the maximum you can, I think. Sorry. So I wish all the very best to all my dear students to have great day and great time. I remain. Thank you.
I am indeed privileged to have this opportunity to speak about Professor K.K. Francis, who was an eminent professor in St. Berkman's College. I am told that I am invited to speak about him because of my association with Professor Francis. True. When I say that, I am reminded of an English saying, "Pitt is to Addington as London is to Paddington." For the students, I shall explain. William Pitt was a famous statesman. Compared to William Pitt, Addington, a simple parliamentarian, was nothing. London was a famous city. Compared to London, Paddington, a very small town, is nothing. Similarly, even though I have association with Professor Francis, compared to Professor Francis, I am nothing. He was a great teacher. When I joined St. Berkman's College in the Commerce Department, he was one of the senior most professors in this college. Just because of that, I tried to keep a distance from him. After joining the department, I went to the economics department to meet my former teachers who taught me economics in BCom. There were some teachers there, Professor George Joseph, Professor Thomas Kaniyamplavin, Professor T.V. Vivarkey, and so on. I went there. When I went there, there were two teachers. One is Professor K.K. Francis, and the other one is Professor George Joseph. I didn't look at Professor K.K. Francis because I like to keep a distance from him, knowing that he is a great man. He is not approachable. So I went to Professor George Joseph, who was my teacher. I talked to him. In the course of our talk, I could see that Professor K.K. Francis is coming to me. Seeing him, I stood up. He told me to sit down. He introduced himself to me. That is his magnanimity. He introduced himself to me, and he sat there. We talked for some time. There began the association with him. He was a great teacher, no doubt. It is said about a teacher should be a hill of knowledge. Teacher should have skill of teaching and will of teaching. In Professor K.K. Francis, all these qualities are blended in appropriate proportion. I will say that may be the reason why he is considered as an eminent professor. Not only in St. Berkman's College, he is recognized as an eminent professor among the academic community throughout Kerala. That may be the reason why he was invited to many colleges to take classes for the PG students. Remember, in those days, there was no such practice. Nowadays, we can see that because of the implementation of UGC, national seminars, and all these things are happening. Before that, there was not such a practice. In those days, Professor K.K. Francis was invited to many colleges to take classes. That was Professor K.K. Francis. He was not only a teacher, he was a great orator. He spoke eloquently, both in English and Malayalam. I remember many occasions, the big occasions in the college where he was assigned the duty of making the speech. I still remember one incident. When the President of India came to our college for the first time, I don't remember the year, but I remember that it was during the time when Dr. Joseph Marur was the principal. Reverend Dr. Joseph Marur was the principal. When Gyani Sail Singh, the then President of India, came to our campus, Professor K.K. Francis made the welcome speech. Well appreciated by all. Not only that, that particular meeting was organized by the teachers under the leadership of Professor K.K. Francis, because at that time Professor K.K. Francis was the president of the Staff Association. The meeting was also a grand success. So he was not only a narrator, he was an organizer also. He has proved that he was a good organizer. He had played in different Shakespeare dramas, in various lead roles, in Macbeth, Merchant of Venice, and so on. While he was playing in different Shakespeare dramas, I also had the chance to have a very small role in these dramas. There also I got the chance to associate with him. I still remember one incident when Merchant of Venice was performed in the college auditorium, Archbishop Coward Hall. It was jam-packed. It was at 7 p.m. the drama began. The auditorium was jam-packed with the students as well as with the general public. After the introduction by Professor A.E. Augustine, who was the director of the drama began. When Professor K.K. Francis entered the stage as Shylock in Merchant of Venice, there was a big applause in the auditorium, even before presenting the dialogue. Remember that he acted as Shylock, the villain of the drama. And I still remember one incident. That is the character in the drama, Antonio, who is a friend, Bassanio, who is a friend of Antonio, approached Shylock to borrow money, 3,000 ducats of money. After the request, Shylock is saying, 3,000 ducats for 3 months. Francis sir was repeating that for 3 times, moving on the stage left and right. With a pin drop silence in the entire Archbishop Coward Hall, packed, jam-packed. I still remember after the drama, for a few months, pre-degree students, at that time pre-degree students were also there. Pre-degree students as well as degree students used to quote Shylock or Francis, 3,000 ducats for 3 months. That was Professor K.K. Francis. He has many or multifaceted personality. He is a multifaceted personality. He is an eminent teacher, no doubt. He is an actor, he is a speaker, great orator, a singer too. But above all, let me say, he was a gentleman, pleasant always, radiating a positive spirit. Let me conclude by quoting Mark Antony. Mark Antony said about, in Julius Caesar, Mark Antony said about Brutus. His life was gentle, and the elements so mixed in him that nature might stand up and say, this was a man. Similarly, let me say about Professor K.K. Francis, his life was gentle, and the elements so mixed in him that nature might stand up and say, this was a man. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Several people have talked about Francis, and since I did not know him, I will not say very much more. But I want to say, after having read the description of Professor K.K. Francis, I think that what I'm going to say is very much in the spirit of what he was teaching at this college. He taught both economics and history. Maybe he was an economic historian, which I am. He made learning a joy for himself and his students. I'm quoting from this law. And he had an extraordinary talent of penetrating to the essence of a problem. And when I read it, I think that he must have been a wonderful teacher. And therefore, we are remembering him today. So that's what I will say about Francis. And now I will go into my presentation. It will have 3 parts. Maybe you can go, yeah. No, it's good, it's good. Just a ramification first. The most important growth in society has been for 200 years innovation. That's something to remember. Many countries have learned that. The US have learned it, China has learned it, India is learning it, and so on. And there is a famous economist in the US called William Baumol, and he had made a lot of calculations saying that between 75 and 90% of all productivity growth comes from innovation. This I heard when I was a young student with no degrees and no knowledge whatsoever. I was deciding then that I'm going to deal with innovation, and that I've done now for 45 years. And it has been immensely rewarding for me, and also important for other people. Because innovation is not only leading to productivity growth, which is needed to build a welfare state. It is needed to build a welfare state. You cannot do that if you don't have economic growth. And it is also nowadays very important for achieving sustainability, decreasing the emissions of CO2 in the atmosphere. And as a result of that, both are important objectives in Agenda 2030. Just brief and rapid, I want us to tell each other what we are talking about. So when I talk about innovation, I mean new creations of economic and societal significance, primarily carried out by firms, but not in isolation. Innovation systems, for me, is the determinants, the causes of innovation processes. This is very simple. I've tried to make it simple. Simplicity is a virtue, and we should be as simple and clear as possible. And I have also recently written this book. It's called Holistic Innovation Policy, Theoretical Foundations, Policy Problems, and Instrument Choices. A long title. And we worked for a long time. It's written with Susanna Boras from Copenhagen. And we worked for 6 years. Not full time, of course, but we did work for 6 calendar years. And when I talk about holistic innovation policy, I mean all actions by public organizations that influence innovation processes. All things that influence. Thank you. You can send it around if you want. So people can take a look. Next picture, please. So this thank you. The first part of the presentation is actually based on that book. Since I have a soft view on copyright, it is possible to download that book from my homepage. I think that since I have done most of the work with the book, I should also have an influence who can read it. And therefore, I'm violating some copyright rules. And Oxford University Press has not said anything about that. Next, please. There are different approaches in defining systems of innovation. We developed the concept of system of innovation from 1990 and onwards. And now the number of hits in Scholar Google, if you write innovation system, it's about, I think last time I checked it was 6 or 8 million hits. Much more than any notion in ordinary economics. My definition of systems of innovation I was developed in 2014, 15. And everything that I said is actually very, very simple. If you want to influence something, innovation, with policy means, you simply include all the factors that influence innovation. You should not only stick with one or two. And the question is, which are all? And I'll come back to that. So my definition is that it's all important determinants that influence the development and diffusion and use of innovation. Can you change picture, please? Talking about things that influence innovations. I wrote a chapter in a book called The Handbook of Innovation, edited by Jan Fagerberg and Richard Nelson and David Mowry. And then I was sitting down for a number of months to basically go through the world literature on causes or activities in systems of innovation. I was sitting for months reading, and that reading ended up in this list. Of course, research and development is an important factor, but so is education and training. And it is stressed much, much less, except maybe in Kerala. I'm hearing that there is a strong emphasis on learning and teaching here. You're famous for that. Number 3 is formation of new product markets. That's from the demand side. It's not only pushing from science side, from above, sort of, but demand side is important. And I will come back in my third part to formation of new product markets through public procurement. I will not go in detail into this, but I just want to indicate that there are a number of factors that influence innovation processes. And if you want to pursue innovation policy, then you should deal with these and maybe others. There might be activities that we have not yet identified. Then we have to do that. But start with 10, it works. And that then includes organizations and institutions, incubation, and financing of innovation, for example. And this is not the final list, but it is one list. It's an approximation that can be used if you want to pursue innovation policy. Next, please. I've already said what I mean with holistic innovation policy, and I think I said that I started using that term about 10 years ago, 2014. And these policies, they can influence both the speed and the direction of innovation processes. and that has to do with the objectives of the innovation policy. And I'll come back to that also. I think that a holistic innovation policy can be based on the systems of innovation approach developed by Lundvall, Nelson, Malherbe, myself, and many others in the 1990s and early 20s, early this century. But if we use the systems of innovation approach, then we have to use a very broad and general definition of system of innovation. But, and here I am very critical to most policymakers in the field of innovation. Policy is as it is practiced in Sweden, in India, in China, in the US, and so on. It is linear. It always starts with science or research. And research is not the most important determinant of innovation. But when the European Commission or other organizations in the world level, when they deal with innovation policy, they actually look at what you can do with research. Research and innovation is not the same thing. They are very different determinants. And innovation policies pursued in practically all countries are still partial. They capture only a few determinants, and linear. It strongly emphasizes research. A lot of research does not have an effect on innovation. And procurement might have a much larger effect than research. I'll come to that. But since policy as it is practiced by government today continues in the same way, I argue that innovation policy is far behind innovation research. It takes time for research to trickle down or get through. Next, please. So the policy community, the policymakers and bureaucrats, and elected politicians, the dividing line is between these two categories within the policy community. Governance matters. Politicians take final decisions, and they often still reflexively believe in the linear view. And this is true also for India. So there is a communication failure between innovation research, innovation researchers, and innovation policy. Next, please. That's what I wanted to say about innovation systems and holistic innovation policy. And of course, everything I write is uploaded on my homepage. All the texts are there because, of course, we want others to read what we write and so on. Now I will say a few words about an experience in Sweden, far from here, very different countries. Sweden has 10 million people. Here you are a few more. This is based on an article published in Research Policy, and the title is Towards a Holistic Innovation Policy. Can the Swedish National Innovation Council be a role model? And my answer will be yes. And I will develop that a little bit now. For all my arguments, there are always books and articles available for the young researcher who wants to change the world, right? Then you go and look at my writing and use it. The Swedish National Innovation Council was existing between 2015 and 2022. And this is the problem with democracies, right? You change governments and they change their priorities. But it was still an 8-year period and a lot was done, and it has been published and it has been changing Swedish innovation policy. This council consists of 10 external advisors from industry, unions, and academia, plus 5 ministers. That's a lot. The Prime Minister, the Minister of Industries, the Minister of Research, the Minister of the Environment, and one more. And they all sit in the meetings. The secretariat was very small, and it is located above all ministers, of course, except the Prime Minister, since it was elected there. Check this. And how did it operate? I mean, this, as an innovation council, this is the only innovation council in the world so far. Because there are scores of other councils, and they are called Science and Technology and Innovation Councils. And they almost exclusively deal with science and technology, not with innovation. In Sweden, the political leadership wanted to insert innovation thinking also in the research policy. And there was a committee appointed, 20 people. 18 of those people were science people, dealing with that part. And the other 2, it was me and a colleague, we argued for dealing with innovation. But we failed. We had no chance, because the research policy people, they were much better organized, they have much better money, more money, and they have all the universities behind them, and so on. So it failed. But then the Prime Minister drew a conclusion of that, saying that, well, then I will start a separate innovation council for innovation policy. Only. And he did. And the Prime Minister is personally sharing the meetings. The meetings are 4 to 7 hours, and this is very unusual. I wonder how many have met Prime Minister Modi for 7 hours. No one, I think. But in the Swedish scene, Stefan Löfven, as his name was, the Prime Minister, he had a personal interest in this and experience, because he was a trade union leader, and he was also the chairman of the Metal Workers Federation, and he wanted to raise the wages a little bit, a couple of % every year for his fellow workers. And he did. But he realized that in order to do that, there had to be productivity growth. Otherwise, you can't do it. It just leads to inflation. And then he was thinking, where is the productivity growth coming from? And then he started to talk to us academics. And I think we taught him that most of productivity growth comes from innovation, as I said initially. An interesting thing with this council is that no reports were written in 8 years. There are many other councils. They have reports of these piles, which no one reads. That's common. But here in the Swedish Council, there was not a single word written, because the agenda was created by the Prime Minister and his staff, only this much on a piece of paper to indicate what we were going to be talking about. And then there were presentations held at the meetings by ministers, by council members, by others, by myself, and so on. It was a completely oral exercise, no writing. So how did they take care of the ideas that came up? Well, no official minutes were taken. We sat there taking notes, of course, but nothing was official. The state secretaries, deputy ministers of the 5 ministers, they have meetings after the council meetings. Only them. And before that, I guess, or I know, that the Prime Minister has expressed what he was interested in pursuing, doing, using. And then the secretaries tried to formalize that, and then started a process that sometimes led to writing and decisions. For example, the public procurement thing, which I will come back to, the Prime Minister appointed the relevant minister for that question, and he said, I want you to develop a Swedish national strategy for procurement where innovation plays an important part. And he told one of his ministers to do it. And ministers are very dependent on the Prime Minister. They do it. They want to do it. Within 4 months, there was a strategy. It's still valid, and it is good, but it's not enough. I'll come back. Once a year, we also went. The government has a mansion in the countryside of Sweden. We also went a mansion where we stay over the weekend, coming Monday lunch, leaving Tuesday evening, and then you really have the time. The ministers are there. They have to have dinner, coffee, talk, small talk, formal talks, and so on. And it was very rewarding for everyone, because ministers, they are always so busy. They don't have time to penetrate an issue in detail. They have to run from question to question. But in this case, that was prevented. And we have dealt with many issues, for example, state risk capital provision, and also innovation enhancing public procurement, which I will come to. So this means that when the Innovation Council had been created, then we had 2 councils in Sweden, one for research and one for innovation. And that is simply excellent, because they are so different things. So I would recommend that. There is a tendency to when you have a committee or a council, you want to include everything, environment and innovation and research and so on, and it ends up with being not very much in as a result. And it's a pity that the government lost the election and the new government decided to close this Innovation Council. But there has been one council started in France, Conseil de l'Innovation, and also there are talk in several countries about creating innovation councils. So I think that will happen, but it has not happened to a large extent. And what was achieved in Sweden was take the next picture, please. Yeah, the final bullet point there is a matter of separate innovation policy from research policy. Of course, they have to be coordinated, because all policies have to be coordinated. But when it's developed and formulated, it's better to have one objective, research, and another one, innovation. But almost no country or no international organization has that. So I'm a deviator to a large extent in this. But at the same time, a lot of these people standing for the using in research and innovation policy at the same time, when talking at the side, they are not stupid. They realize that it is better to make a separation. But it's a matter of teaching the politicians about that. And this Swedish council, Innovation Council, was actually an educational program for ministers. They must sometimes need that. This kind of can change, please. This kind of discussion has had result in Sweden, and you can, since I don't have time to go through that, you can read that in Research Policy, and that article can also be downloaded. Yeah, if this happens, in India, for example, I know there is a think tank, someone told me, of dealing with changing India, but it's too loose. It would be better to have an innovation council. And on this point, I finally want to say that when the Swedish Prime Minister was visiting the Indian Prime Minister officially and diplomatically, the Indian Modi wanted to discuss only innovation and the Swedish Innovation Council. And this is public knowledge, because there were people sitting in that meeting and they have reported that this was the case. So there is a ground for proposing things like that. But of course, I realize that there is a lot of infighting between advisors and between people that want to influence government. Yeah. Now, here. Now I will go to the third part, and it's not going to be long. But maybe it's going to be the most important one. Yeah. This is based on work together with John Michael Zavala. Also published, so you can have access to it. Public procurement is when public agencies, national, regional, local, when they buy goods and services. This is very large. The World Trade Organization covers public procurement of $1.7 trillion every year. It's a lot of zeros in trillion. Potentially, it is a very, very strong policy instrument, and I will soon indicate how I think that it could be realized. In general, 15% or more of GDP is procurement. 50% of Swedish economy is the same, of the Swedish economy is procurement, but 15% is also the size of all Swedish industry. Now you imagine how large this is. I had no idea, and when I started working on this, that this is the case. But it is. And procurement as a source of change, or a source of changing, is much, much larger than publicly funded research. Publicly funded research, it's maybe 1% of GDP. But it might be 10% of 10% might be procurement. Very few people know this. So the conclusion is that if public procurement can lead to innovation, this is a several times more powerful innovation policy instrument than research and development. And it also goes after the needs for how to change the society, not only pushing supply side things in. And therefore I started to think about product procurement versus functional procurement. And I think this is a simple and very important distinction. Product procurement is when the buyer describes an existing product, for example this one, that he wants to buy. And he can describe that, and then I want to buy 50,000 of these. And it's doable. But it cannot lead to innovation. Because if you describe a product and say you want to buy that, you will get exactly that product, and that is not a new developed innovation. It's an old product. This is probably the most important message I have here today. Young people here, listen and try to do something about this. It is possible because the process has already started in some countries. I'm going to South Africa in 2 weeks to give a speech about this to 200 specialists from Africa in what I call functional procurement. And I was surprised when I got the invitation, because I didn't expect there to be such a large interest in Africa. So maybe Africa is running ahead of India now. What I call functional procurement is when you describe a problem that you want to solve. I mean, you don't need to write that I want the local government, they need some vehicles. They don't need to say that we will do this by writing that it must be no CO2 emissions. But you can write that nothing about that. You can write that there should be some vehicle, more abstract, that can be used in this way, and that performs functions that provide solutions to the problems. It's the solution to the problem. And that might be a new product, right? There are many products now developed by small companies that do not get a chance because of this product description. Next, please. Yeah. Currently, description of products is completely dominating. And they often, I mean, now I'm going into deep waters, but the people, there are, in Sweden there are 5,000 bureaucrats dealing with procurement. On the world scale it must be millions. But the easiest thing is, of course, to use the description of the product when you bought something last year. And people tend to be lazy. And if nobody is pushing them, they will buy exactly the same product. The alternative is to make a description of something new, which you cannot. If it is something new, you cannot describe it in detail. But it opens up for several solutions to the same problem, which means innovation, right? And functional procurement is in its infancy. But it is increasing. And it opens up for the third point here, for creativity, innovations, new products, higher productivity, better public services, increased competition. And for example, the European Commission, they have a law about procurement, public procurement in Europe then. According to that law, and I almost quote, there are two ways to pursue procurement. One is to describe a product. Another way is to describe a problem, a function. And that exists. So any bureaucrat in Europe then, I don't know the rules of other countries, but they are published, so that it can be done. And that would be a highly dynamic thing in any economy. So the economies that go first here, they will reap the largest benefits. Next, please. I give an example. Well, where am I? Can you go back one step? No. Well, never mind. This is doable. This would have very large effects. And it might be so that it is happening to a larger extent in some countries, which I don't know about. I've been working for, the first book I wrote about functional procurement was in the year 2000, 23 years ago, which means that I've been working on these 25 years ago, for 25 years. I can see that there is a movement from below. Single administrators. They are concerned about the environment or the CO2. And they go to their bosses and say, we want to do it this way. And he cannot deny them that, because it's written in the law in Europe that this can and this should be done through functional procurement. I'm going to finish here. Maybe I've been saying too much, I don't know. But I will repeat again that the probably most important thing I've been saying is that functional procurement can and should be pursued. That would create, it will still take time, of course, but that would create means to pay for a welfare state, for example. I think I finished with that, so maybe you will remember that last sentence. Thank you very much.
Let me make this an opportunity to thank Father Reggie P. Kurian, Principal, St. Berkman's College, for his constant support and presence. Thank you, Father. I must mention our deep sense of appreciation for Dr. Jacob Thomas, our former Vice Principal, for remembering our dear teacher, Professor K.K. Francis. Thank you, sir. We had an extremely useful day. We have learned a great deal from Professor Charles EDQUIST, the Center for Innovation, Research and Competence in the Learning Economy, Lund University, Sweden. We are greatly encouraged by his gracious presence and immensely benefited by his informative lecture on the innovation systems and policy. Thank you, sir. Let me express our deep regards and thanks to Dr. Shino Varki, Head of the Department, who has been instrumental in planning this program and leading the faculty team in organizing it so effectively. Thank you, sir. Now let me place on record our hearty thanks to all our faculty members, former faculty members present here, and all the friends and family of Professor K.K. Francis. Special thanks to the family of Mr. Lishan Abraham, the recipient of Professor K.K. Francis Memorial Award 2023. Profound thanks and gratitude are due to Mr. Jaren Thomas and Mr. Anand Joseph Penny and the comparing team and the organizing student team for coordinating this program. We also thank Kerala Economic Association and the representatives and all the others for their service. Finally, let me thank all the students, particularly the final year UG and PG students, and all the participants and friends of the department, my dear colleagues. Thank you everyone. I remain.